Stand clear. The doors are open.
It is patriotic to be outspoken.
We are millions strong, and we want another world.
Don't give up.
It's exciting to write books that I want to see in the world.
This has been the most rigorous medication rollout this world has ever seen.
School's not prison. Get loud!
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Carolyn Wang Kong, and I have the honor of serving as the Chief Strategy Officer at the California Endowment. I joined the team in January, and I'll just say it's been a wild ride since. I think all of us can relate. It's been quite a year, but I'm excited to be with you all tonight. I have the privilege and honor tonight of being in conversation with our President and CEO, Brenda Solórzano. I met Brenda about 10 years ago. We're going to actually talk a little bit more about our connection in a little bit. But before we get started, I wanted to first of all thank folks who submitted questions for tonight. Thank you for doing that. We tried our best to weave in as many as we could for this evening, and then we've saved some time at the end too for folks to add some questions. So if you have a comment or a question, please feel free to go ahead and drop it in the chat. We got a whole team of folks who are looking and tracking and sharing questions for us, so we can try to get to as many of them as we can. I want to remind everyone that we're recording tonight's session, and it'll be posted on our website. Y'all are going to get a link tomorrow to the recording, and so feel free to share it with folks who weren't able to make it. And then before we launch in, I also want to introduce two very important people, Giovanna Wormsbecker and Andrea Lust, who will be providing Spanish and American Sign Language interpretation tonight. And so they have some instructions for us. So I will pass it to them. Giovanna?
Good evening. In order to provide language access, this meeting will have simultaneous bidirectional interpretation into Spanish as well as American Sign Language. My name is Giovanna Wormsbecker, and I will provide interpretation in Spanish. My colleague, Andrea Lust, who you see next to me now, will provide interpretation in American Sign Language. If you wish to continue to see Andrea after this demonstration, please click the interpretation button below and select American Sign Language. And now I'll explain how to enable the feature in Spanish. Buenas noches. Esta reunión contará con interpretación simultánea bidireccional del inglés al español. Si usted es bilingüe, no tiene que presionar nada. Si usted no es bilingüe, tendrá que elegir su idioma para escuchar la interpretación. Si está usando una computadora, verá un icono en la parte inferior de su pantalla a la derecha en forma de globo que dice Interpretación. Haga clic y seleccione Español. Si usted está usando un iPad o teléfono, localice el menú de 3 puntos que aparece arriba o abajo a la derecha. Haga clic en Interpretación de idiomas y elija Español. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you, Giovanna. Thank you for that. All right, so let's get rolling. We have a lot to get to. We know you have a lot of questions. We have a lot that we want to share. So I'm honored to introduce you to Brenda Solórzano, our President and CEO of the California Endowment. We're also trying something new for those of you who've dialed into CalEndow Live before. We're not in Zoom boxes. We're actually next to each other, which is different for us, but which is nice because if we were to do it, we would probably just be in offices next to each other in Zoom boxes. So we're here in person, and this is going to be more of a conversation. And so I wanted to start with just, so Brenda, how did we meet? What's our story?
Yeah, and thank you everyone for joining tonight. I'm really delighted to be able to come back a year later after my official start and engage with Carolyn on this conversation. So Carolyn and I met, 10 years ago? Mm-hmm. I was serving as the chief program officer at another foundation, and Carolyn was brought onto a team by another individual, so I can't claim credit for you.
Yes.
But I got an opportunity to work with you there, and now I'm feeling very lucky and privileged to be able to work with you here at TCE.
Aw, thank you. Well, I mean, opportunities like this don't come often to work at an organization as big as and as important as TCE. I'm curious, Brenda, what grounds you in the work here at TCE? It's been a year, so quite a year.
It's been quite a year. I think this is not the kind of year that I would have wanted to step into this role. But I also feel it's the right time for me to be here.
Yeah.
And I say that because we have faced a lot of threats and a lot of attacks and a lot of challenges in this country and in California. And as someone who has come from an immigrant family, as someone who has been a child of the safety net, it feels like it's important for someone like me to have this role at this moment, and continue to advocate and stand and protect those communities that are so important to the California Endowment.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does feel like a really unique and special time to be working in philanthropy, and I've always been a really big admirer of the endowment and the courage that the endowment has shown over the years. And so if there was a time for courage, it's now.
It absolutely is. It's time for us to really elevate our grantees, elevate our communities, the important work that they're doing to ensure that everybody in the state has access to a high quality life, a long life, a healthy life, a life that is fulfilling and worthy of everything that folks are entitled to, and their children.
I want to ask you, Brenda, I know this first year you spent, well, we both spent actually a lot of time out and talking to partners, going up and down the state. You've also been talking to staff and board and other people out in the ecosystem that work with TCE. And I'm curious if there's been anything surprising that you've heard in your conversations with folks, things like, oh, I didn't know that about TCE. That's good to know, or great to hear.
I don't know that I've found surprising things. I think I have found things that are anchored in themes. So I've heard a lot about the commitment that the endowment has had in terms of advancing health and racial justice, and how proud people are to either be a grantee, a board member, a staff member, and being able to work at a place like the California Endowment. I have also heard a lot about how challenging this particular year has been, and that this is the time when an institution like the California Endowment needs to show up and be present and continue to support the important work that we do across the state. And I think there's also been a lot of curiosity about where we're going. What's going on, what's happening, where we're going, and I know we're going to get into some of that here tonight. But I think that is also something that I've heard. But I've also heard a lot of words of encouragement and support, and that has made me feel really good. Coming back to California after being gone for 8 years, it's been refreshing to reconnect with communities that I have known from previous time that I was working in California, build new connections with grantee partners, build new connections with folks that aren't grantee partners, but are very interested and aligned with what we're wanting to support here at the California Endowment.
Have you heard anything that's made you think like, oh, that's good to know, we should work on fixing that?
Yeah, I think that I have definitely heard a lot of things. We are an institution that is grounded in the concept of philanthropy. And
what does that mean? Say more. What does that mean?
So philanthropy is a field, it's a system, and it is an imperfect one, and one that I think has created a lot of bureaucracy and procedures and policies and requirements. And one of the things I've heard consistently, and I would say not only in this role at the endowment, but in my entire philanthropic career, there's a continued desire by nonprofits who we basically serve, who say, why do you do things the way that you do things? Why is it so hard? Why is it so complicated? I often share that people tell me I have to turn into a pretzel to get money, or I have to do mission creep in order to align with what I am doing.
Yeah.
And so there's sort of this disconnect, I think, between how philanthropy operates and how maybe we could operate differently in order to really center communities, see power to community, and allow them to be more in the decision-making power decision role that we need.
I can imagine people have questions about what that could look like. And we're gonna get a little deeper into that. But I also want to ask about, it's been 1 year and you've done a lot already. And I'm curious about if there's one change that you've been able to make here at TCE that you're particularly proud of. One thing that you've been able to do.
I think the thing I would point to, and I don't know that I did it by myself, I did it in partnership with staff and more importantly with partnership of the board, and that was to increase our spend in this particular moment. We recognized pretty early on at the beginning of this year that we were facing significant challenges that were making it even more incredibly difficult for families that have historically not been at the power table, not have access to resources. And so we knew we needed to continue to support the critical work that the endowment has been supporting over the last 5, 10, 15 years. But there was a need to do more. And so the boldness of the board to step forward and say, we're going to increase our spend. We're going to go up to 10%. We're going to have an additional $160 million over every year for the next 3 years. That's significant.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And I'm really proud of the board.
Yeah.
And yes, I can sort of say I teed up the conversation, but really it required bold leadership by our board to be able to say yes to that.
Yeah. I think for me, what's been really powerful is there's few places where you can, oftentimes resources are limited, right? And so foundations will have to make choices around like, okay, well, we got to respond to the moment, so we can't fund the stuff that we were doing before. But at TCE, we actually can fund both, right? And so I feel like that's been really important in terms of continuing to fund our partners who are organizing communities and building power, and at the same time, honestly, it's a lot of those same partners that are helping with the response and meeting the moment too, right? And so just being able to see that holistically has been really powerful and lots to look forward to there.
Yeah, and I think we always make these like bifurcated choices. It's either this or that.
Or that,
What about, it could be both.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we did here at TCE this year.
Yeah. I was just meeting with some partners around, there's been a lot of work that folks have had to do to respond to the moment. They were only able to do that quickly because we've been investing in the organizing and the relationships, right? So just being able to see that connection is super important.
Yeah. I think the other things, there's other little things that are worth noting that we've done. So we have eliminated grantee reports this year. With everything that was going on in the world, we recognize that it wasn't the best use of people's time to be writing to us about what they were doing with our resources. So we're like, let's get rid of that.
Yeah.
We also have been trying out new ways to expedite the grant making process.
Yeah.
And we're beginning to explore this concept of, how do we move from a contractual arrangement that happens when you make a grant to how do you actually gift money that allows communities to do what they need to do?
Yeah, I love that because I think, it's a unique moment in time. And so we have to meet the challenge with creativity, right? And so being able to see through that and show like, it's actually possible. You can do this. You don't need a grant agreement, right? And then for us to be able to try that out at TCE, I feel like is particularly powerful. And what's possible.
And I think this moment is pushing us to even say, what we have been doing, how we have been operating as an industry in philanthropy isn't going to work. We need creativity. We need innovation. We need to change the practices that we have had. And that opens up a whole realm of possibilities that I hope are ways for us to move money faster, to trust communities more deeply, to partner with them that goes beyond the check writing, and to build honest, trusting relationships where we can collectively move towards building that multiracial democracy that we want to have in California.
Yeah. this is a big job. Anything that's been like harder than expected?
Yeah, there's lots of things that I think have been hard and harder.
Yeah.
I always knew this was going to be a tough
that's
job,
true.
right?
Yeah.
It's a big organization. It's an important organization.
Yeah.
And so that in and of itself was going to be difficult. You layer on the moment, right?
Yeah.
And all the attacks and the ICE raids and the dismantling of things that are so critical for health and well-being in the state. That has been really hard and challenging.
Yeah.
We're operating at a time, and I think you feel this too, right? Of what's the right way, what's the right pathway forward. And so we're in unknown territory in terms of what it is to lead. And I think the other thing, and it's a joke, right? I've been saying there's some things that I want to happen and I want to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking, well, I have these 3 little letters after my name.
Yeah.
That I
Big
thought,
ones.
well, yes, they're big, but I thought, well, if I just say something, it should happen, right?
Right.
And it doesn't really happen that way.
Yeah.
It's far more complex when you're leading change and evolution. And it's hard internally and it's hard externally. And it's hard, I think, for all elements of the organization.
Yeah.
And that's just been a harder process than I anticipated.
Yeah. But I also feel like there's wins that we're making. And this is, for folks outside of the walls of TCE, this might feel like inside baseball a little bit, right? Because we have our challenges too as philanthropy, right? And so I think once we start to experience some of these wins too, I feel like there's going to be momentum that just enables us to move faster on pushing that question of like, well, why can't we do it this way instead, right? I want to pivot to, the moment, we talked about the moment that we're in right now and how there's no playbook for this moment. One of the big issues, right, that we're facing in California has been the mass deportation and kidnapping, really, of immigrants and the need to support immigrant families. And Los Angeles has been ground zero, right, for this sort of militarized enforcement. I remember we were here.
Right.
On the 4th floor meeting, and I got so distracted because I just saw truckfuls of military drive by our office. I felt my heart just drop watching that. Like, what world do we live in that we are having military forces come into American cities? Yeah.
And display that kind of force.
Yeah, it was unreal. And I think just recognizing that we are in this place in LA, and of course this is happening all over the state too, right? And may not get media coverage, but we know it's happening all over the state. And yet at the same time, we've seen folks stand up for each other. We've seen California stand up for each other. We've seen mutual aid. We've seen folks really come to protect one another. What's inspired you about seeing that? And then as you think about TCE, what does that mean we need to do to evolve to meet this particular challenge, right?
So there's lots of different things that inspire me in this role. I have the privilege to travel up and down the state and have conversations with, a wide range of folks. But the ones that have been most inspiring are our grantee partners. And the reason that I say that is that in this moment that is so hard and challenging, they continue to show up. They continue to do the work. They're not giving up. They're fighting back. They're protecting their communities. And in ways that aren't just scary, but threatening, right? Their physical safety is threatened. And yet they continue to do this important work of protecting their neighbors, protecting families, protecting kids. And I'm just in awe of them. I'm also really struck by the young people that I've had an opportunity to connect with. One of the things the endowment has done historically is invest in young people. And about 15 years ago, there was a lot of camps and activities that were put on by the endowment to build this pipeline of leaders. And now I drive up and down California, meet with folks, they're not so young anymore.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
still young compared to me, but they are leading these organizations that are doing transformational work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Like that is phenomenal and amazing. And how do we continue to build and bolster them in the important work that they're doing? But how do we also continue to build a pipeline, right? Because people age, and eventually we need to have more young people be part of this.
Yeah, I think we were in Fresno where we met with a bunch of partners, and folks could connect the dots of like, oh yeah, this person mentored me, and then this person mentored me, and just like, it's, so when we talk about investing in youth, it's not just youth, the population, it's part of this intergenerational movement.
Absolutely,
right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I also think that it's transformational in that every generation has a different perspective and different ideas that come in and continue to push us, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I love engaging with young people, is that we as older people, I'll say
I'll own it too, that's fine.
As older person, I tend to get a little stale and a little crusty and a little bit like maybe stuck in my own ways of thinking. And the energy that young people bring in terms of the questions they ask, the alternative ideas they have, the new technology that they're open to is very exciting. Yeah.
I'm curious if there's anything you heard in your conversations with younger folks up and down the state of like, or have they like pushed you in any certain way or kind of shifted your thinking on anything that comes to mind?
I think there's a couple of things that stand out for me when I think about the conversations I've had with young people. I've met with young people in Oakland and in the Inland Empire and in Fresno and here in LA, and they ask the hardest questions. They're not afraid, right? Like they don't care that I'm the CEO of the California Endowment. They're like, this doesn't make any sense. Right. Explain this to me, right? Or like, this is really what we need. And so that ability to just get down to brass tacks of what we need to be talking about and doing is really important.
We need to be in more conversations.
Absolutely.
I'm going to pivot to the future. And I know you get asked a lot, like, what's your vision for TCE, right? We recently announced that we're going to be embarking on a process to kind of reimagine the future and what the next chapter would be for TCE. And I'll admit, I'm coming from being on the hustle side of on the other side of the table from philanthropy. And as someone who gets funded from foundations, you can't help but be like, what are they going to do? Why are they changing? And so I'm curious if you could shed a little bit of light on that of what are your hopes? And actually one of our audience members, Miguel from Anaheim, also asked this question, which is, what do you hope to see in the next chapter of TCE?
Yeah. There's lots of different parts in the way you just asked me. So let me try to pull it apart.
Yeah, sorry. I also used it to vent a little bit. So yeah.
The first is, I often got asked when I first got here, what's your vision for TCE? People continue to ask me that.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I want to share with folks is that I have a fundamental belief that there's no one individual that should have a vision for an institution like TCE. TCE is actually an institution that belongs to the people of California. The dollars belong to the people of California. And so I'm interested in, what do the people of California think TCE's vision should be? How do they define success? And that's a big paradigm shift. And it's not that I don't want to answer the question, but it's not my money to decide what the vision is. So that's the first thing that I wanted to address. The other piece that's connected to this is I don't fundamentally believe that one individual or any individual should have the ability to make unilateral decisions around what we invest in, unless it's your own personal money. But in a community foundation like the California Endowment, I don't believe that. It's one of the reasons why I'm not a grant maker here. I have said to you and your team, I will connect anybody to you and your team because you guys are the grant makers, but I'm not the grant maker. But I do have a hope, I guess is what I would say, for where I want TCE to lead. And that is grounded in a couple of different things. The first is I want TCE to really think about how we center and cede power to community to help us define what success looks like. I keep using the word democratize. Philanthropy, democratized, defining success. And I don't have all the details of what that looks like, but I'm hoping that we can collaboratively figure this out. The other thing is I firmly believe that we can be more than just check writers. Check writing is an important tool, right? And it's maybe our most powerful tool because we do have a lot of resources. But there's so much more that exists within the walls of TCE. The endowment, right? So when we think about grant making, it's $250 million a year, but we got $4 billion that we could play with.
An actual endowment.
An actual endowment, yes. We also have tons of technical expertise within the organization, right? You name a department that you need to have exist in a high functioning organization, we have that. And we also have the ability to have time and space to explore and to think and to consider. And so how do we deploy all of this? And I've been sharing in different settings, like, could we build like teams of Avengers? Is sort of what I'm describing.
T-shirts are in our future.
No, I actually like jumpsuits.
Okay, all right.
But how do we build these team of Avengers that have like a really broad, comprehensive toolkit that allows us to be a resource to community more broadly defined and resource more broadly defined than just dollars, and do that in a way that's in service and in partnership and at the direction of our grantee partners and the communities that they serve.
I love that. I mean, obviously, I think I've come from an approach where we've done similar work like that at a different foundation. And I think for me, I'm also just a really firm believer that philanthropy has a role to play in this sector. And sometimes it's about doing some of the things that our partners can't do, right? Either because it's too risky or whatnot. And so just thinking about, what are the ways that we can step in and support in ways that our partners can't, right? How do we actually identify how to be really complementary above and beyond the check, right? Sometimes it's our voice, sometimes it's space, sometimes it's like you said, technical assistance from one of our teams. So I appreciate that. I think it's exciting to think about what's possible in the next chapter, and I think hopefully folks are getting the gist of, we are really trying to think about how do we release from some of these processes, make things easier for our partners, get money out the door faster, be of different use to our partners. But change can still cause anxiety. And so I'm curious if there's something you could say to our partners about this, what would you say? Like, what are things they can be still assured of around TCE?
I think it's really important to have this conversation, and I'd invite you to share if I leave anything out. But there are certain non-negotiables that even as we start to reimagine what the future looks like, we cannot move away from. And the non-negotiables, from my perspective, are our mission. We are not going to walk away from our mission and serving the people of California that have been at the core of what we have been doing for almost 30 years. The second non-negotiable is this, real emphasis on racial equity and health and the intersection of that. We know that health disparities are seen across populations, particularly Black communities, Indigenous communities. We have made a commitment to those communities in particular. Those are non-negotiables. We can't walk away from that. We have, as an institution, for at least the last 5, maybe longer, maybe 15 years since building healthy communities, have really grounded the work in this idea of power building and knowing that we're only gonna improve the systems and change the systems if we make the long-term commitment to fund power building. It's so critical, right? And so that's a non-negotiable. Like these are things that are part of what we need to do. And then the other one is we got to serve all of California. We are the California Endowment, so we have to think about folks, from the Oregon border to the San Diego border.
I feel like for me, especially at this moment when we're a foundation that's focused on health equity. So I'm 1,000% aligned with you. You can't you can't work on health equity without working on racial justice, right? And not being afraid of that. I think the other thing for me is I really appreciated the courage that the endowment has shown in funding in some of these sectors that health funders may not think are connecting to health, right? It takes a lot of courage to do that, right? Funding in the criminal justice sector and education and community development, like recognizing that if we make a difference in those areas, we're gonna impact health in a positive way. And so I think for me, it's going to be really important to continue to have that expansive view, right? And that we want to change systems. And again, we need to be able to support communities to organize, to build that power, to work with systems, right? To change them.
Yeah, and I think, we're a health conversion foundation.
Yeah.
We're not a sick care conversion foundation, right? So it's not about the healthcare delivery system in and of itself. It's about all these social determinants of health.
That's right.
That at the end of the day, position people in having to access care.
That's right.
And so we can spend all the resources in improving the healthcare delivery system.
Right.
But if we don't fix the upstream things, we're never going to make the progress, right? That we need to make in our society. And so that's why these concepts that are saying are non-negotiables or non-negotiables.
Yeah.
Now, what it looks like, I don't know.
Yeah.
This is why I'm excited about this next year and the conversation that I'm hoping where we can engage with our grantee partners, with nonprofits that haven't been our grantee partners, with key stakeholders, and even with individual actual Californians. Mm-hmm. And again, how do we do that? I don't know.
Yeah.
This is the task I've given you.
Yeah. Along with all of you. But
and that's very exciting. That's a paradigm shift that the community is going to have a significant role in defining this. Yeah. And our board is excited about this as well. Right. And I think that's sort of the other piece that I want to name is this isn't just me, right? Yeah. This is the board saying we believe in these core concepts that are non-negotiable. Yeah. And we want to really work with community to define this. And I would argue our board is actually comprised of a lot of leaders from community.
That's right.
Which helps in this front.
It helps ground us for sure. Yeah. So we're going to come back to this topic in a little bit, but I have a question for you about trust-based philanthropy, which I feel like you've been kind of one of the godmothers of it in a great way, actually, because I feel like I learned how to do grant making under your leadership when I was at Blue Shield of California Foundation, and that was before it was called trust-based philanthropy. And so I'm curious about, we keep hearing more about it now, but what does it mean to you? How do you think about trust-based philanthropy?
Yeah, well, first of all, I wish it hadn't been named that. And I wish that it hadn't been taken over by the field of philanthropy in the way that it has, because it has become a checklist, an approach. If I do these things, therefore I'm somehow a better funder. And none of that is actually how I think about trust-based philanthropy. Yeah. The way I think about it is about some of the things that we've been talking about tonight, right? It's recognizing that there is an inherent power dynamic between those of us who sit in roles where we get to decide, right, how these resources are going to be allocated, and those folks that are doing the important work on the ground. Yeah. And how do you bend that power dynamic? You're never going to eliminate it because we're always going to be in this power dynamic. But you can bend it. Yeah. You can share the power. Yeah. And that is at the root of how I think about trust-based philanthropy. The other piece that's really important is, for me, is that it is a values-driven approach that is about equity, that is about transparency, that is about accountability, that is about really putting communities in the driver's seat. Yeah. And not just saying it, but actually in practice doing it. Yeah. And then the third component is, how do you do that in a way that it actually gets operationalized differently? Yeah. And for me, yes, general operating, multi-year, long-term grants, those are things that are no-brainers.
That's what it's known as now.
Yeah, but that's not trust-based philanthropy. It's like, how do we engage in true partnership? How do we seed power? How do we put communities in the decision-making role? Yeah. How do we break down this imperfect system and reimagine how do we move money quicker, faster, longer in ways that allow communities to define success? Right. And to deploy those resources in the ways that they see fit.
Yeah. Yeah, and it requires us to really break out of a lot of mental models, I think, in the philanthropy sector. And I think the other thing that you've talked about that I'm really excited about, which is, the endowment's had a real commitment to becoming an anti-racist foundation. And the team here has done some amazing work around advancing racial equity and how do we actually think about that, intersecting it with the trust-based philanthropy way of thinking, right? And how do we actually leverage it to actually advance racial equity as part of our practice, right?
And I think that's an important piece, right?
Yeah.
I didn't start doing this trust-based philanthropy because I wanted to simplify systems. I did it
you don't just put,
No, that's not my jam. Why I did it is because fundamentally I saw the inequities. I saw the inequities in who was getting money and who wasn't getting money.
Yeah.
I saw the inequities in terms of who was holding the power.
Yeah.
And how that didn't work. And when, I've been a funder a long time, as have you, and the places where I saw the most transformational work was where I was part of an effort where I was allowing community to define the challenge, define the solution, define success.
Yeah.
And we were just kind of facilitating the process of getting them resources to do that work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is about creating more equitable society. That's about creating more access to capital.
Yeah.
And that's fundamentally why I do this.
Yeah.
And again, I hate the fact that it got co-opted in the field.
It's branded.
It is, and I think it's more than how the field has interpreted it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, so I think just more to say there about, again, how are we at the endowment pushing practice, and more exciting work to come, I think, in that space.
And I think it also requires us internally to think about how we do our work differently.
Yeah,
right?
big time.
So part of what I've been saying to the team is I want us to be thinking about being an enterprise where we're working collaboratively.
Yeah.
And we're actually thinking about how do we deploy all of our resources, all of our skill set, all of our knowledge towards supporting our communities.
Yeah.
And that's just radically different. It is.
Yeah, it can be, and also really exciting. Really exciting.
And scary.
Yeah,
because change is hard.
Yeah, change is hard, but this is where I would invite our partners too, thinking about the resources and the levers that we have at the endowment, especially for our longtime partners, would really invite your feedback on what are those other things that TCE has access to or has resources within our walls that would be useful to you, right? That would be useful to bring to the fight, that we're not already. So that's just an open invitation. So we have this time together, live Q&A and conversation. So I want to use it to also clear the air about a few things. Hopefully we're doing that. But we've talked about what a really unprecedented time this is for all of us, and also for foundations, especially foundations that are unapologetically working on equity, and in our case, health equity. It's not something I would have ever expected where, I mean, as philanthropy goes, it should be a pretty safe job, right? But we're in this situation where there's federal investigations underway, and there's some national leaders that have called for legal action against foundations and investigations of foundations, and even criminal indictments against foundation leaders. Can you say, and just set the record straight on what our commitment is at the endowment to racial justice and the communities that we know are most impacted? I know you talked about this a little bit more, but pointed question given the unique risks we face right now.
Yeah. So I think I'd share with the audience that one of the first things I did when I got to the endowment was have a conversation with the board around what kind of organization do we want to be in terms of risk profile? Mm-hmm. And that conversation landed very clearly from the board, which I was excited to see, that we needed to be a bold, unapologetic leader at this moment, and that we were not going to back down from any community or any issue that has been front and center what the endowment has been about for the last 30 years. That was clear. And so that continues to be my guiding North Star of we've got to show up in the way that we have always showed up. You know, I keep saying there's nothing illegal about anything we're doing, even if there are claims that things that we're doing are illegal. And we're, you know, yes, we are under attack, but our grantee partners and some folks that are in community are under way worse situations and facing with a lot less resources, right, than we are. And I think about them, I worry about them. And at the same time, I also have to think about what are the things that we need to do to ensure that we can continue to be bold and unapologetic, right? And so we've been doing a lot of internal work to prepare for whatever may happen because we continue to be bold and unapologetic. But I, you know, I had to have a conversation with my husband and my kids. I may be in this role, and it could land me in a congressional investigation, in a criminal investigation. Are you okay with that? So it's been a personal conversation, and I'm like, yes, this is why I'm doing this work at the end of the day. And I don't know about you, but I never thought that we would have to hire a criminal defense attorney in this job. But that's just the reality of where we are today.
Yeah, and I mean, I think part of this is, I never thought that we would be in that situation. And I'll just share with the audience, I mean, we did a training for our staff, right? And this was especially during the raids because it's also about protecting our people, right? I mean, they're going to be out there doing their work, and so as an organization, we have a responsibility also to make sure that our staff are kept safe and know what their rights are.
Right. And also that we continue to ensure that we can continue to give the money to do this important work. Right? Like, it's no good if we're not here, if our resources get taken away. That's not great either. So we have to think about all these things.
That's right. But I will say, you know, I think we've been really, we've had to grapple with a lot of decisions because I think there's been a lot of recommendations made, and I know there have been meetings where we've been like, we're not going to do that. No, we're not. We are still going to move forward the way that we're moving forward.
But it also has required us to be creative, right? So we've come up against challenges of like, we really should do this. And there's all the reasons from a legal perspective or a risk perspective that maybe we shouldn't do it. And yet we're being creative on how we put things together and are changing the way that we do things at the endowment. And that's smart, right? It's not.
We have to do what we have to do to continue to get resources out the door. That's our job. Okay, we have a few questions that I want to get to from folks who have submitted questions and who are on. Actually, one more question for you. I knew we were going to go off script, but that's okay. All right, one last question from me, and then I'll move on to our audience questions. And this is really centering our partners, right? And our partners that are doing this work. It's been a year. It felt like it had been a year in like February or March. We were already there. And folks have been working incredibly hard. They're exhausted. They, like you said earlier, folks are feeling attacked. And we don't really know what 2026 is going to be like. And so, especially for those of us that are working on health and racial justice, who knows what else is coming our way. What's one wish you have for our partners? We're heading into the holiday season. What's one wish you have for them that you want to share? Some inspiration.
I think hope. I know that that oftentimes we get caught in these kind of circular conversations of it's been a hard year, it's been challenging, it's been difficult, we don't know what's coming, and we keep kind of in that cycle. And I understand why, right? I do it myself. We do it actually together in the office of like, did you read the paper this morning, right? But we have to shift the paradigm. We can't give into these power dynamics. We have to have hope. We have to believe in our communities. We have to believe in our neighbors that we are here to make California a healthier place, a safer place, a more equitable place. And that's what I hope, is that people can stop for a moment and reflect and find, where are those glimmers of hope. I see them all the time when I'm out in the field. I see it in the young people and the conversations I have. I see it in our staff when they show up to work, even when, you know, our parking lot is being staged for ice raids. I think that there are a lot of signs out there of hope, and I want to change that paradigm. I think the other thing, Carolyn, is we've been in this world trying to make these systems that serve underserved communities better. And they're being dismantled. And so the question I have, you know, recently asked in different places that I've been speaking at is, how do we shift from this attack mentality, they're attacking us mentality, and they're dismantling this mentality, to, we have been in this fight for decades. Communities have figured things out. We have figured out ways to continue to serve people, to continue to be there. That's what we need to lean into.
Oftentimes better than the systems have ever tried to.
Right?
So,
like every improvement has been something that somebody has thought about of how to make the world a better place. And so let's figure that out. Let's focus on that. And then the other thing is, and I'm guilty of it, I have now taken a vacation. I don't know that I should be sharing that, but I haven't.
No, you should, because then we also get less email when you go on vacation.
But I haven't, and I'm tired too. And I realized that I need to shut down, and I'm actually going to take a break. I'm going to turn the computer off. I'm going to go someplace where there's no cell service, so I'll be able to completely disconnect and recharge and come back. And that's my hope too, that people can find a place, a little bit of place to recharge. Do whatever it is you need to do to take care of yourself, because we need to show up to continue to be in this fight.
I know last week too, you released a video, or we released a video that we've been calling a love letter to California, which I feel like has been also just really inspiring in terms of what can be possible when we remind ourselves of really what we're about in California. And so we'll put the link to that in the chat so folks can check it out. Okay, let's move on to the questions from attendees. So I have one for, our reach is wide, Brenda. This one is from Atlanta. Mark, who's joining from Atlanta, he asks, have you seen other foundation leaders increase their commitment to health equity and social justice work, or are they pulling back?
I think it's not a either or question answer here. There certainly has been pulling back.
How do you know? How do you see it in your work?
I hear about foundations that are worried about funding particular kinds of work for getting put on the radar of, a congressional committee or investigation of some sort. I hear about people saying, this is kind of risky work, right? And now maybe we're going to pull back from that. And then I think, certainly government funding has been pulled back. In a lot of different ways at the federal, state level. And so I do think that there's been some pullback. But I also, particularly here in California, have seen other funders who are partners with us that are saying we need to double down. I've heard of other funders who've increased their spending. I've heard of other funders who are really recommitting to the ideas of power building and racial justice and health equity. And so I think it's a little bit of both. And that's why I say to you, we have to continue to be a leader in this moment. We have to encourage other folks to continue to stay in this space. We have to figure out how we leverage additional dollars. Because we alone can't do it. And so that's...
I feel like I've seen a mix of both. And I remember catching up with a funder in Texas a few weeks ago. Because I think that's also where it's like lessons learned. Like, we're struggling here in California. How the heck are you doing things in Texas, right? And what can we learn from each other?
But I have to tell you that, sometimes we think that we're figuring it all out in California, but then there's interesting things happening in other states. I was in a conversation today, and there's a funder that was trying to help a community that was facing ice raids. And they realized pretty quickly that there was this immigrant community, and they were being taken advantage by an employer who was providing housing for them in exchange for working in the fields. But they were not paying them.
Yeah.
And so they're like, how do we help, right, this community? And they asked the community, what do you need? And they said, well, it'd be great if we could own this land.
Yeah.
Because then we can actually do the work and get paid for the work and not get paid in housing.
Yeah.
And that foundation bought the land.
Amazing, right?
And gave it to them.
Yeah.
Like, when you hear those stories,
Yeah.
it gives you hope.
It does.
Right?
It
And that's
does.
not here in California. It's in another state, but it's
Yeah.
an example of what could be possible.
Yeah, and it's durable too, right? Okay, so the next question, Peter from Koreatown, right here in LA. How has uncertainty around government funding affected TCE's funding strategy?
Yeah, I think the challenge for us in the current government funding situation is that government funds are so much greater, right, than what we have and then what collectively philanthropy has. And so there's no way that we can backfill.
Yeah.
It just can't happen, right?
Yeah.
We could do it in one day and change absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And so that's been a little bit of a challenge
Yeah.
that we have to think about. Okay, since we can't backfill, how do we creatively think about deploying our resources to advance work?
Right.
It's also, and this is something that you always push us on, right?
Yeah.
Which is, how do we organize other funders
Yes.
at this moment
Yeah.
to fund the issues in the communities that are important and the approaches that have been part of what TCE has done?
Yeah, I think for me too, it's been absolutely heartbreaking. I'm not going to lie, right? Watching organizations, I mean, some organizations have lost like 30, 40, 90% of their funding because of federal grants and things being pulled back. And I think just even having a straightforward conversation around infrastructure, like what's the infrastructure that you need to sustain the next few years, and how might we support that, right? It's hard to have to ask those questions, but I do think part of our role is that, okay, if we can't backfill, but we need to make sure this partner still exists, right? And so how do we put our efforts and resources towards that has been another way that we've been thinking about it. One more question, Angela from here in LA. How do you protect your health and well-being when everything seems so depressing?
Geez, that is a tough question, Angela. I think it goes, I probably go back to the hope and the self-care. And also I have stopped waking up in the morning and the first thing I pick up is that phone and look at those headlines and what's happening. It's just not good. And I also don't do it at night.
Yeah.
So that I can sleep. Sometimes we forget to see the hope and the beauty that's immediately in front of us. And I think that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
We also need to, there are inspirational stories about what's happening in this country, the folks that are out there protecting their neighbors, that are, the mutual aid that has crept up.
Yeah.
There's so much good out there.
Yeah.
And how do we focus on that and
Yeah.
not get so hyper focused on these things that have been done to communities we care about?
Yeah. I think for me, it's, it sounds kind of backwards because it's basically working more in some ways. But conversations with our partners, I feel like just gives me so much more energy around just being regrounded in why we do this work, and continuing to learn. I also am raising 2 teenagers who will keep you honest.
Yes.
But they're watching and listening to everything we're all doing, right? And now kind of forming their own analysis of it too. And so I feel like that grounds me in terms of, okay, we got to take care of ourselves to be able to do this work. I am gonna pause here and just see if the team, I'm gonna break wall for a little bit, but the team has any additional questions for us at this time? Okay. So I want to just punt then back to us. So this is, we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
Hopefully this has been helpful to folks. It's been pretty wide ranging. And so just curious, like what else do you want to say in this moment? Like it's been quite a year. The other thing that I didn't get to ask you was, so I think this is kind of funny because I remember when I came in, folks were like, "Oh, Carolyn, we're glad you're there because you know California." And I was like, "Brenda's from California." And they're like, "But she just lived in Montana." I'm like, "No, but she grew up here." But I have a question for you that might be controversial, which is,
Oh no.
what's it like to live in LA? Because you are from the Bay Area, San Francisco.
And you know, hats off to those Dodger fans, which is really hard to say from someone from San Francisco.
And a Giants fan.
And a Giants fan at that. It's different. It's different from living in Montana, certainly. The weather's different, for sure.
That's not what I thought you were going to say. But yeah, the weather's different. Yes.
It's been fascinating to come into LA because I lived here for a period of time earlier on in my life.
Okay.
But now that I'm coming back as a grown adult,
Yeah.
I love the diversity. I love the complexity. I love that it's a big city, but a small town in many ways. And, slowly over my first year, I've been building relationships here and understanding how everything is tied together. I got a lot to learn still.
Yeah.
I want you to go out on the road with me in LA.
Yes, as long as it involves eating. Yes.
Yes, there's lots of great food. I have definitely benefited from that. But at my core, I'm a Californian.
Yeah.
I wasn't actually born in California. I was born in Guatemala, but I will always be a Californian. I will always care deeply about the communities. And my entire career has been here, except for the 8 years that I went to go do the work that I did in Montana. And I wish they had allowed me to do it in California. I wouldn't have left. But that was the only place that allowed me to transform philanthropy. And so I'm like, I'm going to go do it over there so that I can come back home and do it here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so we thank Montana for giving you the chance to do that. And then because I think doing it here at TCE will be so exciting. There's a lot to look forward to. And, I think there's going to be so much for us to learn alongside with you all on what's working, what can we improve, right? I think the room to be creative and test things. So you're going to be watching us test a lot of things, and some things will work and some things might not work, but I'm excited for it, here for it.
And it's that collective, right? That
Yeah.
collective element of it's not me, it's not you.
Yeah.
It's not just our teams, it's not our board. It's all of us,
yeah.
everybody in the building and outside the building and across this great state of ours.
Yeah. So we have instigated a little bit of a debate in the chat around baseball. So sorry, but it's cool. It's all California, so it's good. I want to say thank you so much to folks for joining us and letting us be a part of your evening tonight. This is not the only time we will do this. We're experimenting. This is our podcast room, so we're experimenting with different ways to engage with you all. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you for tuning in to the prior CalEndow lives that we've had earlier this year. This is the final event for 2025, but I will say stay tuned because in 2026, we'll be looking for new and additional different ways to engage with y'all as well. Like I said at the top, watch your inboxes. We're going to be sending out a quick thank you to you all with the link to the recording. And so you'll have that tomorrow. It'll be on our website. Please feel free to share, or if you want to rewatch it, you can. And I think that's it. Thanks everyone for being here. And thank you, Brenda, for the conversation.
Thank you. And I want to wish everyone a safe and wonderful holiday season. And I will keep the door open and invite me out to community, reach out to me. That's what I love about my role, and I'm looking forward to more of that next year.
Yep. Thank you. All of us, reach out to us. So, all right. Thanks. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.